You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show. And welcome, everybody. Welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM, 24/7, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, Leading Edge Radio Network, and we could go on all day, but we wouldn't have any time left for our show. And joining me today as my co-host is the president and CEO of American Uncensored News Network, Dana Allen. Dana, welcome back to Conservative Commandos.
Hello again, Rick. It's great to be here.
Great to have you with us, my friend. You know, Dana, I saw something yesterday that I wanted to ask you about, bring it to your attention, see what you thought. You know, Dana, you are in the media business. You are the president and CEO of AUN-TV.com. You were one of the original creators of Newsmax. And when I saw this, I thought of you. It was an article. NBC wants to become the next Fox News, insiders say. Media insiders are buzzing that Andy Lack wants NBC to become the next Fox News after he poached cable stars Greta Van Susteren and Megyn Kelly from the network. He believes he's building MSNBC and NBC into the next Fox. It seems the network wants to take a more conservative tone, a source says. Dana Allen, your thoughts? Any possibility that NBC and CNBC could change their stripes?
You know, it seems extremely unlikely, but they did hire those two people. I did notice that. I did not know about the article that you just mentioned. You know, when I think back, they have tried it to a degree. Maybe let's say they tried to be a little bit balanced. And what they did was they had Alan Keyes as a. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
Yeah, and so they had him on MSNBC, and he brought up topics like, you know, the .45 caliber hole in Ron Brown's head. I guess I talked to him about it personally, and I said, you know, why isn't this ever covered? He says, I covered it on my show on MSNBC. So they have done it before, and that went nowhere. There was a time when MSNBC was doing fairly good about the time of the first inauguration of Obama. And, you know, their ratings were beating CNN. But then as people saw what happened when Obama became president, ever since, MSNBC has just had horrific ratings. I'm in the business, so I look at their ratings and I go, how can you have a national show and only have 20,000 people, you know, watching it? Because I know, like, in, you know, KSFO, talk radio show in, a station in San Francisco, you know, a liberal area, conservative talk radio, and some of the hosts were getting like 200,000, 300,000 people listening to their shows just in one market on radio. And MSNBC, sometimes their ratings are as low as 20,000 for all the United States on all the cable and satellite networks. So, you know, they do have an economic.
And you know what, Dana? Last Saturday, they didn't get any ratings at all because all their 20,000, or not last Saturday, the Saturday before, because all 20,000 of their watchers were out on the streets in the women's protest march. So Saturday, January 21st, was a very, very bad day for them.
I guess what I'm going to do is say, you know, at least they weren't all out rioting, which is very common with people of those beliefs. So I wonder, you know,
they were Friday. They were Friday, Dana.
Oh, they were Friday. Okay,
they were Friday. Down at the inauguration, they were rioting down there. They were setting fires and breaking windows and looting and all that. They were there.
So I guess. Oh, that's right. You were there.
I was there, Dana. I didn't see the rioting. I didn't see the looting. I saw the aftermaths of it. Our co-host, Anna Little, was also down there, and she saw the rioting. She saw the looting. She had tickets to the inauguration, could not get there because of the protesters and the demonstrators. So, one thing, that really wasn't covered a lot by the media. They didn't show the rioting. They didn't show the protesting. If it wasn't for the internet, you would have never saw the picture of that limousine burning. You wouldn't see the breaking of the windows. People are so stupid, Dana, today. They break windows, they videotape themselves doing it. And did you see that there was a 10-year-old boy who started a fire? Okay? And Fox asked him, did you see what happened? Did you see who started it? And the little boy says, yeah, I started it. And then he dropped some F-bombs at Donald Trump. And this is a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah, well,
where is his parents?
That's how.
Oh my gosh!
That's probably his. Chances are his parents have taught him those values. Unfortunately, but
Dana. Another thing, I know. I'll let you talk, Dana, one of these days. The other thing is, to me, being down at the inauguration, it looked like a Halloween party. The way these people were dressed, the protesters.
Yeah.
They really, you could have swore you were at a Halloween party, the way they dressed.
There is a relationship there. I notice that very often they'll have, zombies out in the street.
Yes.
Dressed up as if they're dead and so forth. And, this conservatives, Republicans just don't do that. And for some reason, there is definitely a correlation between political beliefs and behavior, whether it's rioting, which, I've studied it, and there's basically never been a Republican riot in the history of the United States. And most of the riots that we have had have been almost entirely of Democrats and often organized by the Democratic Party, such as the 1863 Democrat riots in New York City, which killed, probably over 100 people. And the Democratic Party actually organized that riot. And then in South Carolina, in Wilmington, they took over the city. They had a riot. They murdered about 50 black people, took away their voting rights, and removed everybody at gunpoint that was an elected official and just installed Democrats. So there's this mob rule rioting thing that is very much tied to the Democratic Party in the United States. And, I was wanting to know, is this worldwide? And so I typed in conservatives rioting in Britain, see if that had ever happened. And what came up was not stories of conservatives rioting. It was of people of the Labor Party rioting and trying to burn to death alive people in the Conservative Party headquarters. That's why it came up on the Google search, was I said, conservatives, rioting and Conservative Party rioting, and it's actually an attack by labor people trying to burn down the headquarters of the Conservative Party is the story that I found. So and this is not just like the other things you talked about. In the case of the riots during the inauguration, if there was 1/4 as much property damage and rioting at the Right to Life march,
yes.
Would have been on NBC, CBS.
Well, then then they would have covered it. Then they would have covered it, but they didn't. Maybe there should have been a little bit of glass breaking there at the Right to Life march, because then networks like ABC and CBS and NBC would have even mentioned there was a Right to Life march where hundreds of thousands of young people. And that's what got me, Dana, about the Right to Life rally.
Notice that.
Young people.
Very young, yeah. The percentage of young people that are opposed to abortion is actually higher than the percentage of middle-aged and older people. There has been a shift away from abortion. Some people think it's because of the ultrasound images or whatever.
Right.
There's a positive on this issue that the younger generation is moving away from abortion.
Hey, Dana, what I'm going to do is I am going to put up a time-lapsed video up on the Conservative Commando's radio show Facebook group page it was a time-lapse video of a camera on the roof of a building videotaping the thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of marchers during the Right to Life rally. So I'm going to put that up on our Facebook group page during our break, but you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network right here at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, I'll Learn to Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7, and a whole bunch of other places. Today's show, like all our shows, is being brought to you by the First Amendment and protected by the Second. Dana and I will be right back.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos radio network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with yours truly, Rick Trader. And today my co-host is the president and CEO of AUN-TV, and that is Dana Allen. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at 8 a.m., log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or 11 p.m., highplainstalkradio.com, or you could hear our show, this show, and all the shows that are part of the Conservative Commandos radio network here at WNJC 1360 from your telephone by calling this number, 832-999-1199, 832-999-1199. You don't need an app. You don't need to download anything. You don't even need a radio. You don't even need a computer. Just your telephone and this number, 832-999-1199. Dana, I'm getting, this. I love the computer, but it drives me crazy when you try to open something up and you get all these stinking stupid pop-ups. But a friend of mine, a friend of ours, a friend of the show, Mary Brockman, has sent an article to me. If I could just get rid of all these. Executive order leads to capture of ISIS leader Rashid Mohammed. This is breaking news. Terrorist suspect Rashid Mohammed was arrested on Tuesday, January 31st. That happens to be today. At approximately, and here's these stupid pop-ups again. Oh, that's why I say, got to print things out. Was arrested at the John F. Kennedy Airport. This marks the first successful story following President Trump's executive order to protect the nation from foreign terrorists entering the United States. Mohammed, 32, was questioned due to the heightened security measures that resulted from a presidential executive order. There you go, Dana.
How about that? That's good. I saw a video last night, and it was from Norway, and it was a Muslim group in Norway. Sort of like the primary, Muslim organization in Norway, and it was a meeting, and the guy was saying, why do we always get called homophobes and this and that and so forth? So the guy that was the head of this thing, there's probably 2,000 people in the audience. He says, well, there really isn't such thing as radical Islam. He says, this is just standard Islam. And so then went about asking people in the crowd. He says, who here believes if caught in adultery they should be stoned to death? And basically everyone rose their hands. And the same thing with homosexuals and so forth. And so he finishes. He says, this. What we're accused of isn't of being a little small splinter of Islam. It is primary Islam is these beliefs, and they're putting this out on the internet as a YouTube, and it was quite convincing.
Well, Dana, what bothers me about Islam, and I'll say all of Islam, not just the radical part of it, is. Mm-hmm. The ones that aren't radical, the Muslims that aren't radical, why are they not standing up to their brethren, to the ones who are radical, and say, do not use my religion for these purposes?
Right.
But you don't see that, Dana.
Right.
You don't see that. For instance, the Catholic priests, the sexual abuse of the Catholic priests, okay? Many thousands of Catholics stood up against that. Rightly so. Yeah. But you don't see any Muslims standing up and telling their brethren to knock it off, to stop it. We want to live in peace. Where is that?
That's right. There's a few brave ones. There are a few brave ones. And in fact, when we were at CPAC last year, he dropped by the booth, and it is a little bit hard to pronounce his name, but we both thanked him for his work and so forth. I know someone that gave a speech about it, and he said that he's using he wasn't using his real name, and he says he does get death threats, and if they knew he was speaking at this event, telling people about how things work, that there could be assassination attempt on him. So I think one of the reasons is there are people that are opposed to this inside Islam, but they realize that they're risking death if they publicly speak out against it. And the other factor is, there isn't all that many people against it. That's the scary thing. Yes. When the 9/11 terror events took place, the next year the most common male name in the Muslim world was Osama, given to babies. And that and when they gave out candy and the Gaza Strip and so forth. So the exact percentage I don't know, but I'd have to say that probably at least 40% of the people worldwide are sympathetic, inside Islam, are sympathetic to terrorism.
I agree. Hey, Dana, we got about 4 minutes before we have to go to our next break, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell our listeners who our guests are today, and I'll do the first one, or I'll introduce the first one, Dana, and you can do the second. Former Congressman Paul Brown, a primary care physician who represented the 10th Congressional District of Georgia, will be joining us. And while serving in Congress, he was appointed to the House Homeland Security Committee, the House Committee on Natural Resources, and served as chairman of the Investigations and Oversight Committee for the House Science and Technology Committee. Dr. Brown, former Congressman Brown, is going to be joining us to talk about the ban on travel from the Middle East. And I can't think of anyone better who I'd like to get his views on this, considering he served on the House Homeland Security Committee. And I'm sure we'll talk to Dr. Brown about other goings on in Washington, D.C. Dana, who will you be speaking with at 4:35?
Yes, is someone that maybe you're a little bit afraid to pronounce her name.
No, I'm not.
Joke there, but
Veronique Desvergers.
Oh, you nailed it. You nailed it. And she's a senior research fellow at the. It's not French, but it's Mercatus Center at George Mason University. And
Mercatus Center.
Pronounce it again for me again.
Mercatus.
Thank you.
Hey,
and
that's what I'm here for, you know?
She's an expert on economic growth, taxation, tax competition, on and on. A lot of people probably know her from National Review. She's got a blog there. She's been on television, Bloomberg, Wall Street Week, Washington Post, CNN, 2020, Stossel, etc. So she's of the libertarian bent, an expert in economics, and we're looking forward to talking to her about just how important economic growth is.
All right, so we got a couple of great guests lined up here.
Yes, we do.
You know, Dana, earlier we were talking about rioting and protesting, and I wanted to bring up this point. 8 years ago, when Barack Obama was elected and put into office, a lot of people on the right were very upset about it. And they went out there, and in my opinion, they did some things. They protested, they demonstrated, they organized, they donated money, they worked for candidates, which led to the 2010 elections where the Republicans captured Congress. In 2014, you had the same thing. You know, they went out there, they worked, they donated money, and the Republicans were able to capture the Senate. And, you know, I was in some of those protest rallies. I was at the 9/12 rally in Washington, D.C., and there was 1 million people there, Dana.
Yes.
We protested, we worked, we spoke out. And that now today, here we have President Donald Trump in the White House, and people on the left are going bananas. But instead of doing the things that conservatives did, all the right things, spoke out, work hard, no, they're rioting, looting, holding up people at airports. What a difference. What a difference in the way we handled our disappointment in 28 versus how they are handling their disappointment today.
Yes, yeah.
What a stark contrast.
It is one of the biggest differences there is between people who identify the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Moral equivalency does not fit here any more than it did between the United States and the Soviet Union.
No.
Truth is that political parties are some of the most evil things that have ever existed on Earth. The most murders are related that have happened in the last 100 years were ordered by political parties. You had Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist Workers' Party murdered over 10 million people. You had Joseph Stalin and others in the Soviet Union. Communist Party murdered about 50 million. You had the Chinese Communist Party murder about 50 million. You had the Communist Party of Cambodia murder 1/3 of their citizens. And so this thought that all political parties are morally equivalent is just, it's ignorant and it's crazy. And in the United States, the Democratic Party from its foundation has been the way you just described it. They've always been the party of rioters. This goes back over 130 years that they've been the party of rioters. The Republican Party has never...
Dana, I'm sorry to do this to you. We've got to go to our next break because I want to get our next guest in, Congressman Paul Brown, and I want to make sure we have all the time that we need in speaking with him. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Now, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Don't go away. On the other side, we'll be speaking with Congressman Paul Brown.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Schrader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of today's show, please check out our websites, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. Or at 8 a.m., you can log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, and also at 11 p.m., you can log on to highplains.talkradio.com. And you can listen to Conservative Commandos from your phone by calling 832-999-1199. I'm very pleased to bring to you former Congressman Paul Brown, M.D. He's a primary care physician. He represented the 10th Congressional District of Georgia. And when he's in Congress, he was appointed to the House Homeland Security Committee, the House Committee on Natural Resources, and served as chairman of the Investigations and Oversight Subcommittee for the House Science and Technology Committee. Dr. Brown, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos.
Well, it's always a blessing and a pleasure to me to be with you guys. Is this Dana?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Dana, good to talk to you again. I thought I recognized your voice, and I knew it wasn't. I didn't think it was Rick from what I could hear. So, anyway, glad to be back with you guys.
Yeah, I know. I remember talking to you last year.
Right.
You know, one of the biggest topics right now is on immigration, and in this case where Trump has, put out this executive order to, block people from certain Middle East countries. Do you think this is constitutional?
Absolutely is constitutional. The major function of the federal government under the original intent of the Constitution is national security, to keep us safe, to have a strong national defense. And I applaud what the president's doing. We've got to secure our borders. We've got to prevent terrorists from coming into this country. The liberals are going crazy over this whole issue. Why? Because they want open borders. They want anybody and everybody from all over the world to come in this country, and they're not fearful of the terrorists. In fact, they call Donald Trump a terrorist and a whole lot of other names, such as they've compared him to Adolf Hitler and called him a Nazi and other things, but they're totally off base. This is constitutional. In fact, Barack Obama himself even prohibited people from Iran coming to this country back during the Obama administration. Of course, the press didn't say anything about that. But it's all anti-Trump, and that's what this is all about.
Right. You know, it's actually in the Constitution that this is, the Constitution is a very small document, but it's right in there that that the federal government, the president, has the ability to decide which groups can come in the United States. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the Constitution sets up a process where the federal government sets up immigration rules, basically, immigration laws. And so no one has the right to come in this country who's not a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizens, of course, have the right to come and go, but no one outside of U.S. citizens have the right to come here. It's a privilege, and the president has the authority to say it is a national security issue. We're going to delay for a period of time until we can vet these people. We're going to have this extreme vetting to make sure that anybody who comes in this country is not a terrorist. The ISIS fighters themselves said that they were going to embed into the refugees that were coming in this country from Syria. They said that they were going to embed over 3,000 ISIS fighters. Wow. Barack Obama just let them in. There's no way to vet these people. A lot of them don't even have birth certificates. There's no way to find out who these people are. We need to have a pause, and I applaud what President Trump is doing in trying to put that pause in place until we can figure out what's going to be in the best interest of America.
Right, right. You know, do you think this is just purely for, political conflict of interest in terms of that in the past, actually, most Muslims voted Republican because they're closer to the Republicans on social issues. But the last 20 years or so, they've been strongly voting for Democrats. Do you think that's why they want them to come in?
Well, I think the liberals are having a meltdown. They're still in denial about President Trump being elected, and he is the duly elected president of the United States, and they're still in denial about that. They see their whole socialistic agenda that they've put in place falling apart. President Trump cannot be, I don't think, can be bought by anybody. And that's the neat thing about this. He wants to make America first. He wants to make America great again. And that's exactly what he's going about doing. We've got to make America safe again. And the only way to do that is to know who comes in this country, to make sure that the people that are coming in this country are in the best interest of our nation, and that we don't have terrorists coming into this country. That's the reason we have to build the wall, secure the border. That's the reason we have to vet the people that are coming here into this country. And that's the reason we need to have a moratorium, at least a temporary one, on people coming from these 7 countries that have been declared countries that harbor terrorists, so that we know who comes in this country and we know that the American people can stay safe. So he's doing absolutely the correct thing for this country and for the people of this country, and I applaud what he's doing.
Yeah, very good. You know, how would the United States compare to other countries, let's say like Mexico and New Zealand, on how easy it is to immigrate into those countries?
Well, if you look on the southern border of Mexico, it's extremely difficult for people coming out of Central America into Mexico. They vet people, and it is extremely difficult, from what I understand, for people to get into Mexico from the south. But we have had a porous border. I was on the Homeland Security Committee when I was in Congress. We have people coming in this country from all over the world through our southern border. It just has to stop. We've had 4 presidents, George Herbert Walker Bush, Bill Clinton, then George W. Bush, then Barack Obama, all who have wanted open borders and who have looked at this country as just being a nation state that's equal to other nation states all over the world. They all look to the UN for guidance. They all are in favor of us having a total open border policy. All 4 of those presidents had a law put in place that they should have obeyed. It was put in place in 1986 under President Reagan, where when President Reagan signed a bill authorizing the amnesty of about 2.5 to 3 million illegal aliens in this country, that law that legalized all those aliens also said that the border would be secured. It said that anyone who hires, rents to, or harbors an illegal alien has broken the law, and should be punished for doing so. But we've had 4 presidents, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, that have totally disregarded the law. All 4 of them have had an open border policy. All 4 of them have not obeyed the laws that are in place. We don't need any new laws. In fact, President Trump just said that just the last few days. What we have to do is secure the border and start enforcing the laws that are on the books. That's what President Trump intends to do. At least that's what he said he's going to do. And what we've seen since he's been inaugurated, he is carrying out what he told the American people that he was going to do. So I fully expect him to secure the border and start enforcing the laws that are on the books. And it's absolutely critical. It's a national security issue. It's absolutely critical that we secure the border and we vet the people who come into this country. The whole legal immigration system is broken, and then we have all these illegal aliens come in this country. They're not immigrants. They're lawbreakers. They're aliens who have come into this country illegally, and we need to deal with them from that regard. So the Trump administration, I think, is going to enforce the law, and I think the American people need to contact their senators and congressmen and say, let's do this. Let's secure the border. Let's start having the law apply, the laws that apply on the books, and everybody being treated equally under the law. And I think that's what Trump's going to do. But we've got to put pressure on our members of Congress in the House and the Senate to make sure that they work with President Trump to do what is absolutely critical for the future and safety of this country.
Right. I agree with you, Dr. Brown, that he is going to follow through on this. And, but you talk about the prior ones, like when George W. Bush was president, it was obvious he wanted the border to be more or less open. I, talked to people in the Border Patrol that, that they weren't really pressured into, doing strong enforcement. And so, in the case of Barack Obama, if you recall, that doing make work jobs, infrastructure jobs, or whatever, was a huge deal to him. And then he said afterwards, he says, well, I found out there weren't all that many shovel-ready projects.
Right.
And, I mean, if there's ever a shovel-ready project, it was building the wall, And so, obviously, he did not want a wall. And, I know Rick wants to jump in here.
Here in the Conservative Commandos radio show, we are speaking with Dr. Paul Brown. He's a primary care physician who represented the 10th Congressional District in Georgia. Dr. Brown, great to speak with you again.
Well, it's great to be with you and Dana today.
Dr. Brown, I followed your advice that you just said to Dana, that we have to call our representatives in Washington. I called Senator Menendez, I called Senator Booker, I called Congressman Donald Norcross, and the message I delivered to them was they were elected to serve and protect the people of the United States, citizens, not foreigners. And what I wanted to ask you, Dr. Brown, is this the kind of message I should be delivering to them? And also, I felt a little frustrated because I felt like I was talking to some 18-year-old intern. Do those types of messages get to the member of Congress?
Well, Rick, to answer your final question, yes, they do. If enough people call and tell the congressmen, tell the senators that we want them to do this, etc. Former U.S. Senator Everett Dirksen one time said this. He said, when he feels the heat, he sees the light. Unfortunately, the principle that most congressmen and senators stand firm on is their own reelection bid. And if enough of their constituents call them and say, Buster, you're heading in the wrong direction, if you don't start heading in a different direction, I'm not going to vote for you. And if enough people contact them and with that message, if enough heat is applied, then they will start seeing the light. There are many members of Congress that really need to feel the heat so that they see the light, and many of them need to see the door. And the thing is, they have to become afraid of their constituents. We've got to put pressure on members of the Congress in the House as well as in the Senate to start representing the people, not the special interests, not the establishment in Washington. You know, you're talking about your senators and congressmen, but the thing is, the Democrats have a policy of total government control, which is socialism. They want total government control of everything involved in human endeavor. Fortunately, there are a lot of Republicans, establishment Republicans, just want an efficient socialist government. It's got to stop. We've got to have a revolution at the ballot box. So contacting them, yes, absolutely. The message that you gave them, absolutely. That's great. Perfect. But what we need to have is thousands of people calling, emailing, going to see the congressman, going to see the senators, and say, we're not going to put up with this anymore, and we're not going to put up with you anymore if you keep doing what you're doing. We've got to secure the borders. We've got to start looking at what is best for America, not what's best for the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. We've got to look at what's best for America. We've got to start creating jobs. We've got to bring manufacturing back to America. We've got to make America safe again. We've got to make America great again. And to do so, you're going to have to start working with this president who wants to make America safe, make America great, to provide good, high-paying jobs for all Americans. And we've got to change what's going on in Washington, and it's absolutely critical for the American people to contact their senators, contact their congressmen. You can go on house.gov or senate.gov and find out who your senator is, or the two senators for your state. You can find out who your congressman is. There are phone numbers there that you can get. You need to contact them, call them, email them, go see them, and tell them we're not going to put up with this status quo anymore. We've elected a president, but that's just the beginning. If you don't get in and start representing the people's interests, America's interests, then we're going to get rid of you.
Congressman Brown, I'm looking at an article here from Breitbart as of yesterday that reminds us in 2015, Chuck Schumer of New York was in favor of a very similar type of ban. But how things have changed since Donald Trump was elected president.
Well, absolutely. As I mentioned to Dana, President Obama put in bans on people coming from Iran. He did a similar ban. Actually, his State Department is the one who named these 7 countries as being the state countries of terrorism that harbors terrorists and supports terrorism. And so it was the Obama administration. They're just being hypocritical. It's all about attacking Donald Trump, trying to make him an illegitimate president, trying to make him be something that they want to try to get rid of. So they're trying to discredit him in any manner that they possibly can. And Chuck Schumer will go to no ends, and Nancy Pelosi as well will go to no ends to try to discredit this president. And you're going to see a lot of people, in fact, even in the Republican Party, my own party, try to discourage folks from supporting Trump. Karl Rove was just recently made some anti-Trump types of comments. And it's just, we've got to stop. We've got to get rid of the establishment folks in Washington and start putting America first. Let's make America great again.
You know, Dr. Brown, I know Dana wants to jump back in, but before that, I just want to give out this telephone number, and I want all our listeners to write it down and to use it. It's how to contact your congressmen and senators. It's 202-225-3121. 202-225-3121. Call that number. They will direct you to your congressman and senator's office. One more time, that number is 202-225-3121. Dana, I'll swing it back to you.
Sure. Dr. Brown, in immigration, we hear on television all the time this mantra repeated over and over that it's always good, and that we're a nation of immigrants and all this stuff, and this is said without any really thought or research going into it. So I decided to look into the history of it, and what I found was the opposite was closer to the truth. The worst thing that ever happened in the Cherokees was immigration by white Europeans. The same was true of the Incas and the natives of California. Millions died from immigration, both by violence and mostly by disease, and they had their land stolen after that happened. And so, after doing this research, it seems that actually the history of immigration is that it does not benefit the people that are already living there. It benefits people that come in, but it generally harms the people that are already living there. Why aren't we hearing this on television?
Because they don't want those facts to be known. In Hosea 4:6, God says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." And the thing is, the establishment, particularly the Democrat establishment, want to bring in these uneducated, unskilled workers to put them on the government, what my good friend Star Parker calls the federal government's plantation, so that they have one job, and that's to vote for Democrats. They want to give them legal status so that they can vote, so that they can continue to have more and more Democrats elected to office. Then on the Republican side, you have the big government Republicans, as well as a lot of big businesses want cheap labor. They don't want to pay a good wage to laborers. They want cheap labor, and so they want open borders. They want these kind of folks to come in. You hear all the time, well, these jobs are being filled by people because we can't get Americans to fill the jobs. Well, if you look at our welfare system, it pays people to not work. And the level of benefits that people get from our welfare system, and that's not only food stamps and welfare checks, subsidized housing, you can go on and on and on, health care insurance through Medicaid. The thing is, a lot of people who should be in the workforce today aren't, because it benefits them financially to not work and just to receive the government largesse. We're headed to an economic collapse of this nation. We don't have the money to continue on this course that Democrats and Republicans have fostered in this nation. It's got to stop. We're going to have an economic collapse of our government. If the interest rates go up appreciably from what it is today, the government cannot pay the debt that it owes. So it's got to stop. We've got to start putting this country back on a solid economic course. That's what I did when I was in Congress, and we've got to demand that from our elected representatives as well.
Yeah, I think that's your explanation, I think, is really what is driving this, and it's extremely anti-American for politicians to benefit themselves by getting all these people on welfare. And today there's the percentage of men working in the United States with full-time jobs is lower than it was in the Great Depression. It's the lowest level ever of employment in the entire history of the United States is taking place right now. And most of the people that I know are in disability, they're not disabled. And I know people that are disabled, seriously disabled, paralyzed, blind, etc., and they have jobs. I know someone's blind from birth, and he works as a programmer for IBM. So, you're absolutely right. It eventually will kill our economy if we don't do something. And actually, Rick has one more question he wants to squeeze in here.
Yeah, Dr. Brown, before you run, I hope you have a little bit more time. I wanted to get your reaction to last night he fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who was an Obama loyalist. I wanted to get your reaction to that. And also this morning, it was very amusing watching the news. Whenever you would have a Democrat come on, you could pick out their talking points in a minute. They talked about, this is now a White House in chaos. I heard that phrase 3 times. Could you give us your reaction to the firing of Yates, and also where do these Democrat talking points come from? Who initiates them?
Well, the president should have fired the acting Attorney General Yates. Actually, she used to work as a U.S. attorney here in the North Georgia area prior to going to Washington. But she should have been fired. What she did was totally against the law, and she has no constitutional basis to do what she did. It was all political. She should have been fired, and I applaud the president from doing so. But you're talking about what they're saying the White House is in chaos.
There were the talk. I was watching Fox News this morning, and they had 3 different liberals come on there, and each one of them used the same phrase: White House in chaos. You know, I remember the day of the inauguration. The day of the inauguration, I started to hear about Donald Trump's dark inauguration speech. And I Googled that, Donald Trump's dark inauguration speech. I got 3,500,000 hits. I mean, where do these talking points come from? Where do these Democrats come out with their talking points?
Well, I think they were walking lockstep with each other.
Yes.
We've seen this over and over again. In fact, even when I was in Congress, I saw the whole Democrat caucus or conference, whatever you want to call them, the whole Democratic members of Congress saying the same thing about every single issue that came before the U.S. House of Representatives. They stick together. But in the Republican Party, we've got a problem because we've got some liberty-loving Republicans like me who believe in the Constitution as it was intended to be, and then you have the establishment Republicans that want the power, they want the perks, they want a big but more efficient big government, socialistic government. And so we've got a schism within the Republican ranks. We've got to get rid of those kind of establishment Republicans. That's why I keep saying we've got to have a revolution at the ballot box. We've got to throw those establishment Republicans out of office and put people in place that will abide by their oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. We've got enemies of the Constitution. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama are enemies of the Constitution. But so is Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan and a lot of the Republicans in the House and the Senate. We've got to get rid of those folks and put the right kind of people in place.
Do you have another minute?
One more.
Okay, one more. Okay, you talk about Ryan, McConnell, whatever. Do you think after seeing what happened with the Trump revolution, there is any way for them to get in line? Or we just need to get rid of them?
Well, I think if enough people contact them, as we were talking about earlier, Rick, a lot of them will come into line and will start doing what we want them to do. You see, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a democratic republic, which means we live in a representative type of government. And what we've got to do is make our elected representatives fearful of the voters. They're not today. They look to the special interests who write their campaign checks and help promote their reelection bid. They don't look to the voters. And unfortunately, most voters just go along because they're nice guys. Or we saw just in this last year's election, incumbents all across this country in the House and the Senate, by and large, were reelected. And there were very, very few incumbents that lost. We need to change all that. There are a lot of incumbents that need to go find a real job instead of just supporting their own special interests, padding their pockets, looking to gain more and more power behind what they're doing and buying our votes. It's just got to change, and it's up to the American people, we the people, to do that.
Dr. Paul Brown, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always love having you on. Is there a way for our audience to get in touch with you?
Not today, Rick. I'm looking at some. I'm looking at the possibility of doing my own radio show.
Okay, that sounds good. Where'd you get that idea?
Well, you have encouraged me on this program a number of times to do my own radio program. I actually used to do radio. I had a program called House Calls with Dr. Paul, which is a program where we talked about medical issues, trying to get people to understand what their doctor's telling them, and I would discuss medical issues so that folks could understand in layman terms. And I did another program on a Christian radio station I called Salt and Light, where I talked about the current public policy and political issues that were in the news and discussed those things from a constitutional, an original intent constitutional governmental view, as well as from a biblical worldview. And so I've done radio before. I enjoy doing it, and I have been highly encouraged by some dear friends, including you, and I appreciate your encouragement, Rick, to do so. But I'm looking at doing that. We're going to relaunch paulbrown.com in the very near future, and so there will be ways to get in touch with me in the very near future.
That sounds good. Again, Dr. Brown, thank you so much. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you, Rick, and God bless you, Dana. It's always a blessing and a privilege to be with y'all. Keep up the fight. We've got to have a revolution at the ballot box. We've got to put this country back on the course that our founding fathers gave us, and that is a philosophy of limited government constrained by the enumerated powers of the Constitution. And the American people need to know what those are. The courts only have 5 things that they can even rule on, all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Congress only has 18 things that they can pass laws about under the original intent, and executive orders should be administrative only. They should not create new law either. So all those things need to that we see where judges are making law, presidents are making law, and Congress is making laws that they have no authority to make. We need to send those powers back to the states or the people. It's up to the American people to do that.
All right. Amen. From your lips to God's ears, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much for joining us.
God bless y'all.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM FM 24/7. Don't go away. Dana and I will be right back with more news and commentary.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. Or at 8 a.m., you can log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 11 p.m., you can log on to High Plains Talk Radio, and you can listen to us but with your phone by calling 832-999-1199. Your host for the segment are Rick Trader and yours truly, Dana Allen. And Rick, you hear on television all the time that there's no proof that there's no voter fraud at all going on. Have you heard this?
Oh, yeah, I've heard this garbage. It's a lie. You know, Dana, I told the story. I vote in a little town, a town of about, or a township of about 6,000 people, has like 6 polling locations in this township. And election morning, I went in to vote about 9 a.m., and I was there for about 10 or 15 minutes because, you know, you walk in, you register to vote, they give you a ticket, you go, you're in the machine, you do your thing there, you come out. Well, I spent a little longer there because there was an old friend of mine there, and we were catching up a little bit. And I guess while I was there were about 10 people who came in while I was there. 5 of those people were not on the voter registration vote. They were not on voter registration. They were not registered to vote. They got provisional ballots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 4 of those people were Hispanic. The other was a black gentleman. Okay. They weren't on a voting poll. They weren't registered to vote. So they were given provisional ballots.
Right.
You know, it's long known. It's long known about voter fraud in New Jersey. In fact, Brendan Byrne, who one time was governor, Brendan Byrne said, and you can Google this, that when he dies, he wants to be buried in Hudson County so his vote will continue to count.
Yeah, I know, and Richard Daley said in Chicago, he says, vote early and vote often, in public, on television cameras. Well, you brought up one thing where there's a lot of people that vote that aren't registered to vote. Here's the other side of the coin. There are almost 3 million people in the United States that are registered to vote in more than one state.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, there's 2 million people registered to vote in the United States who are dead. So, in addition to people who aren't even registered to voting, there's 5 million people in the United States. Well, 3 million are alive, 2 million are dead that can vote. And these people, we don't know that all of them vote, but a lot of these people do vote. And you know how these people can make this claim? Oh, there's no evidence of a single vote in the last election that was, fraudulently cast. When you have 3 million people that can vote in 2 different states at the same time.
Well, there are so many examples of voter fraud in Philadelphia. Right here in Philadelphia, in 2012, there were 59 voting districts that took, and there's a lot of voting districts in the city of Philadelphia. I forget how many right now. But in 59 of the voting districts in Philadelphia in 2012, Mitt Romney did not get a single vote. That took in 19,000 votes. Mitt Romney did not get a single vote out of those voting districts. Okay? Not a single mistake, not a single hanging chad, not a single pencil mark. Mitt Romney didn't get a single vote. Explain that to me. Also explain to me the Al Franken race for Senate against Norm Coleman. That went back and forth and back and forth and recount. Finally, it was decided when about 600 absentee ballots were found in the trunk of somebody's car weeks after the election, and every one of them was a vote for Al Franken. Explain that to me.
I know. Well, these let's call them voter fraud deniers.
Yeah, I love that.
Deniers, they're employing Adolf Hitler's technique of the big lie, and the concept is it's easier to tell a big lie than a little lie because people think, oh, someone couldn't go that far to tell a lie, and then you just repeat it over and over again, and that's exactly what these voter fraud deniers are doing by claiming there's not a single, vote that was cast in the last election illegally. It's so absurd. It meets Adolf Hitler's criteria, and you mentioned the thing in Philadelphia where, like, out of 14,000 people or whatever voted,
19,000 votes. 19,000 votes. Every one of them was a vote for Barack Obama.
You ask me, how can you explain that? Well, that's easy to explain, Rick. All you need to do is every one of those, all 19,000 of them were totally sober and not on drugs, and they're also perfect people that never make mistakes.
Right.
Now, obviously, people that are drunk vote.
Well, why didn't I figure that one out, okay? Why didn't I?
And this isn't new. When I was studying the Civil War, I found out that in Florida, according to the official voter polls, not one person in Florida voted for Abraham Lincoln. Check it out.
Wow.
So this isn't new. Obviously, they were, just throwing away any votes for Abraham Lincoln because even though it was a slave state and, it probably would have 90% against him, there are people down there that didn't believe in slavery, and you had new arrivals, et cetera, and you had freed slaves. And a freed slave isn't going to vote for the Democratic Party. So,
well, I don't know at that time in Florida if freed slaves would have had the right to vote.
That's true. I didn't check that out. That's possible because it was under the control of the Democratic Party.
Right.
I would prevented them from voting, but nevertheless, 100% of the people in Florida did not believe in human slavery, and so it's just like North Philadelphia, people voting, 19,000 voting. That's impossible.
Well, Dana, just another little personal story. A man I knew had a medical problem, was in the hospital for a while, then went to a rehab facility, and was at this rehab facility during an election. And when it came time for him to vote, he was told that he already voted.
Yep.
Yeah.
It goes on, over and over again. We have a couple of articles up on aun-tv.com about this. So if people want to prove it to their friends, there's absolute, proof on these things. And I'll try. I'll pull out a couple of things that that would indicate it. Is let's see, one of the previous. Well, droughts, I'm having trouble under pressure in finding this, but it has the facts already said about 3 million people that are registered to vote in 2 different states. And I know personally that this happened in between California and Nevada, that there were people registered to vote, the same person in both states, and they went ahead and did it. They voted in Nevada, then they drove across the border and voted in California. And this is one of the keys is there's no verifications. These people claim that, it doesn't happen. No one is trying to verify whether or not people are voting in more than one.
Dana, it could be stopped. It could be stopped very easily. And the way you do that is, number one, you adhere to our laws. You enforce our voter laws. You find out who is voting illegally, and you prosecute them. And you make the prosecutions public of that. That's number one. Number two, you match up death records with voting records. That's another way to do it. Number three, you get rid of this early voting. All voting should be on the same day. The whole country should go out to vote on the same day. Number four, I like what they did in Iraq, where they dipped people's thumb in a bottle of ink when they went to vote so they couldn't vote more than once.
Right.
Okay?
Well,
so there are things that can be done to stop fraudulent voting. However, Dana, we have a large party in this country called the Democrat Party, which profits from voter fraud. And then the other problem is you got people like idiot Paul Ryan who says, I don't think there's any voter fraud. If he's that stupid, who elects someone that stupid to the House of Representatives?
It just defies belief. Like someone put out the example that in I think it was Seattle, there's only like 25 people that were cited for jaywalking in a year. Now, do you think only 25 people jaywalked in Seattle, in that year? It's probably more like 500,000 jaywalked. So if they're not trying to enforce something, and that's the case with voter fraud, then, That's, and then the funniest case of voter fraud I've ever seen was by, our guest 2 weeks ago, James O'Keefe, where, the main guy at that time saying that there's no voter fraud was Eric Holder, the Attorney General.
Yep.
So James O'Keefe went into his district, and they handed him the Attorney General's ballot and said, "Go ahead and vote." And the only reason he didn't vote was he didn't want to. He says, "Oh, I forgot my driver's license. Oh, no, I just feel better if I went back to my car." And then he didn't vote. But they handed him Eric Holder's ballot, and so then the next week or the next election does it again, and this time they have this big page scotch taped down on the desk, and it says, "For Eric Holder, demand photo ID." That was absolutely classic.
It is absolutely classic. Wow. So what else is going on AUN?
Well, one of the biggest things that we spend money on is schools, government schools. And I don't like calling them public schools because the public doesn't control government schools. The public controls what are called private schools. So it's like the terms are absolutely backwards. And, in them, there's this libertarian down in North Carolina, and his name's Bob Luddy, and he's built his own school system. Now, what his main occupation is he's the number one manufacturer in the United States of stoves and the vending systems for restaurants. But he had problems with a lot of his employees not being able to do math and understanding scientific things good enough, so he wanted to get involved with education. And so at first he tried to work with the school districts and realized that was just totally hopeless. And he doesn't think we should try to reform the government schools. He thinks we just get everybody out of government schools. So he created his own network of low-cost private schools, or take that back, public-controlled schools, non-government schools, and he's only spending about half as much per student as the government schools do, but he's getting better results.
Well, you see that, Dana, in Catholic schools.
Yes.
In New Jersey, there's some districts called the Abbott School Districts that they're spending about $30,000 per student a year to educate them. And then you've got the Catholic schools, and I know of one particular Catholic school. My wife is on the Board of Education there. Tuition for a parish member is $4,800 a year. A non-parish member is $6,500 a year.
Yeah.
And the results of those students in Catholic schools are much better than students in public schools. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that, okay? But look at the results. Look at the cost. Look at the results. So when you say he can educate a student for a half, man, I believe that. Totally believe it.
And his costs are in line with the Catholic, and I think the Catholic church schools, they may get some help.
They do. They get some help. They get some subsidies. They have fundraisers, but so do public schools, Dana.
Yeah.
Public schools have fundraisers.
Yeah. In this case, the schools are called Thales schools, run by this Luddy guy, and they charge $5,300 for elementary school and $6,000 for junior high. And one of the reasons is, just one example is he built an entire school, high school, for $9 million. Down the road, new government high school spent $76 million just on the athletics related.
Wow.
Yes. The stadium or football stadium, the basketball gym, etc. I mean, that staggers me. I would guess that my high school probably cost $2 or $3 million to build.
Well, Cedar Creek High School in Egg Harbor City, New Jersey, was built about 5 or 6 years ago for $80 million. That's a lot of money. It's a lot more money than this guy spends on his high schools. Hey, Dana, got to take a break. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network. here at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Don't go away. On the other side, our next guest will be Veronique Desroger. Be right back.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow Patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we're trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos radio network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
For a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. Or at 8 a.m., you can log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 11 p.m., you can log on to highplainstalkradio.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos on any phone by calling 832-999-1199. I'm very pleased to bring our next guest on, Veronique De Ruggi, and she is a senior research fellow at the Americas Center at George Mason University. Her primary research interests include the U.S. economy, federal budget, homeland security, taxation, tax competition, financial policy. She blogs about economics on National Review's The Corner. Her charts, articles, and commentary have been featured on a wide range of media outlets, including Reality Check, Street Smart, the New York Times, Room for Debate, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, CNN, Strassel, 2020, C-SPAN, and Fox News. She's also named to the Politico 50 as Influential Media Outlets Guide to Thinkers, Doers, and Visionaries. Welcome to the Conservative Commandos.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I see you've written an article on National Review about economic growth and about how incredibly, important having high economic growth is. In reading that article, I see that in the past, in the 60s and 70s, that we ran about a 4% economic growth rate per year. During the Obama administration, what was our growth rate?
It was on average, it was 1.4. But I should say that actually even in the 90s, we were well over 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the reduction in rates has been in growth rate. It started actually in 2004.
2004, interesting. And what do you ascribe that change in the growth rate to?
The growth of government, I would say, is the biggest factor. There was a lot of spending in the last 15 years, and in particularly the and the growth of regulation has got to be like the biggest culprit. We've just had tremendous regulation imposed on businesses, and especially since the financial crisis and under President Obama. And just, I think there's a pretty wide consensus now about how regulation slows the economy quite dramatically. And the problem is, like, we tend to think, oh, you know what? I mean, it's just basically reduces the bottom line for businesses, but it's actually not true. It actually the misery spreads around in the form of higher taxes and lower quality goods and slower economic growth for all of us.
I can give firsthand, confirmation of what you just said. I'm an inventor, and one of my businesses is in explosives. And so I think people can understand that, there does need to be some regulations for explosives. But it's just taken to the point that is so counterproductive and so ridiculous. My partner and I both agree that by far the number one problem we have, it isn't competition, it isn't, our own productivity or anything like that. It's regulation. And it like just a couple of weeks ago, we had to reapply, and it took my partner 4 days, not doing anything on the business at all, just to reapply for our permit to produce explosives. So, it's prevented us from hiring people. It's just, I can't agree more with what you just said.
And this is for reapply. You athletes are still in business, right? But there are a lot of companies who end up being dissuaded, and innovators who end up being dissuaded for even entering the marketplace because they have to prove before they do, and this is particularly true in the realm of healthcare or healthcare is actually a good example, that they have to kind of invest millions of dollars to show that there's just absolutely zero risk associated with their product, which is actually a completely unrealistic and undesirable threshold.
Right, and then that prevents drugs coming from market, and when they do come to market, the price may be two or three times higher than if there weren't all these over-regulation things. Detroit's an example of this in a way that, the city's been destroyed. And in the 2010 census, it had over 20% unemployment rate in Detroit, and it just seems like everyone loses, But there's one exception. The people lost, the country lost, Michigan as a state lost having it. In 2012 election, Detroit voted 98% Democrat. And 50 years earlier, they actually had a Republican mayor. And so, there is one entity in the United States that actually gains when regulation kills jobs, and it happens to be the same entity that's one of the primary pushers of all these regulations. Do you think they actually know what they're doing on this, or do you think it's accidental? I don't know. I'm not an election expert, but I know that under President Obama, the Democrats at the state and local levels have lost more seats than, look at the map. It's just red all over. All around it's red. So actually, I think... What? Except for Detroit.
Yes, except for Detroit. Maybe at local levels are different. But I think there is some... there's certainly some truth to what you're saying with regard to spending. Someone who actually campaigns on spending goodies on people, on not cutting spending, on expending tax credit, on expending this program and this program, is positioning themselves to be appealing to voters. And it's really unfortunate that the incentives in politics to actually lie to people and promise things that will never actually be able to. We can't deliver. We can't continue spending 21% of our GDP and collecting 17% in revenue, roughly. And the solution is not to raise taxes, because raising taxes really above and beyond 20% of GDP is just not realistic. It's under the current tax system is never done for a long period of time, and more importantly, it's actually killing economic growth. What we need to do is cutting spending, but that is not a program that seems to be an easy one to run on.
Trump has said some things on regulation are just totally out of the norm lately. So he's talking about reducing regulation by over 50% and maybe reducing the
75% even.
That's the term he said. Yeah, and he also cutting the amount of federal workers and so forth. If he's able to get those policies through, what do you think our growth rate would end up being in 3 or 4 years?
I don't know what our growth rate will be for sure first, because I don't know that there's 75% of regulations to cut or that are worth cutting that would generate a lot of growth. Don't get me wrong. I think 75% of regulations are useless, but what I mean is the first you cut generate a ton of growth, and the further along you go, for instance, when you cut the regulations that are on the books but that no one implements, right? You don't get really quite the same bang for the buck, and it takes a lot of time for Congress to repealing these regulations. But so I don't know how much regulation there is really to cut. There's certainly a lot he can do, and it will definitely have a major impact on the economy. How many points of GDP, I don't know. But what really matters is, it could, you could say, well, it's going to be 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. But the thing is, once you actually free innovators from the constraint of all these regulations, when you actually let innovators innovate, when you don't tie their hands, when you let them bring goods to consumers, who knows the kind of innovation they're going to bring about, and who knows the kind of growth explosion we'll see because of this.
Right. And we're going to continue talking about this. This is great, but I have to go into a commercial break right now, and we're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM FM 24/7.
They say I'm crazy, I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and crshow.com, or at 8 a.m. log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 11 p.m. log on to highplanestalkradio.com. And you can listen to us at any time at 832-999-1199 on your phone. Welcome back, Veronique.
Thank you for having me.
Good. You know, we have technology really is speeding up, and I've worked in that business. I've been in Silicon Valley and so forth. And with 3D printers and all these things, we're having even more automation advancement than we have in the past. Now, as an economist, do you think that should actually increase the growth rate even more than it was in the past?
The deregulation and technology?
Well, not the regulation, just the fact that we're living in a different world now that has much faster technological progress. It would, much faster productivity gains.
It depends, right? I mean, in a way, economists will tell you if you're already growing faster, like the bang for the buck of growing slightly faster, right? It's not as big as when you're starting from almost nothing. Mm-hmm. But considering the advancement of our technological advancement, who knows what the next big breakthrough is going to be, right? Mm-hmm. And when that is very quickly available to most people, then you are going to see real benefits and potentially very big ones. So I guess there's two ways it could go, right?
Sure. And a lot of people fear automation. And I remember Barack Obama saying, the reason why there's less jobs now is because you have automated teller machines at banks, et cetera, et cetera. But the really, big, automation in the past was that 90% of people worked on farms, and tractors and so forth came along, and now it's only 2 or 3%. And when that happened, our growth, I think, actually accelerated. Those were, the boom years in the early 1900s for the United States. So, for these people that claim that today that, automation is the enemy, is there really evidence that automation reduces economic growth or reduces?
No, I think, you have these fears. I mean, we've had them when the automobile came on, and we've had them when, it's a recurring fear, right? The fear that workers are all going to be replaced by robots, but it hasn't happened in the past. I mean, automation usually has actually led to significant net positive. It doesn't mean that some particular people will not be hurt by it, right? But as overall for the economy, it's always worked out just remarkably well. There's no reason to think that for whatever reason this time is going to be different. The other thing that's important to notice is very often technological innovation end up making people, including people at the lower level of income, more productive, and that means higher wages. I mean, we've seen it often, and so I'm just not anxious about this. Does it mean there will be people who will lose their jobs? Yes. In the same way as, when have you walked in a travel agency, right, to book your tickets, right?
It's been probably 20 years for me.
Exactly. We all do it online. There's Expedia. And strangely, people don't have that anxiety about this. They don't even think about, what happened to all the travel agents? Well, who knows? Maybe they did something else, or some of them maybe never found a job. But overall, we can't deny the tremendous increase in productivity that Expedia and those travel sites have brought. I believe that the same is going to continue happening in this country.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And when I tell people that are afraid of this, I say, well, do you want to be out with a sickle, cutting wheat all day long? Because that's, what people used to do. And there's just no way you can have a high standard of living if you're doing something like that. When someone's on a tractor, they're 1,000 times more productive. And so just inherently, they can get paid a whole lot more for that. Yes.
They used to be, most Americans, like a much larger share of American workers were farmers, and now it's somewhere around 2%.
That's
Man,
right.
what happened to all the farmers?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Where they found other jobs.
That's
right. Maybe some of them, no doubt, kind of never managed to, put themselves in other situations. But but overall, it's been amazing for the American economy, that trend of actually replacing people with machines.
Sure, you can buy a dozen eggs for $1.50 or whatever. And I remember when I was in school, they taught us that during the gold rush in California, that miners paid up to $1 for each egg. And obviously $1 was worth a whole lot more back then than it is today, and it's because of all these automations and so forth. You've talked on a lot of different written on a lot of different topics, and one of the things I saw is you're involved with some study where they looked into whether everyone thinks, well, if the government just hires people, whether they have anything to do or not, and do all this stimulative spending, that this that you get back $2 or $3 for every dollar the government invests.
Yeah.
That you're involved with a study that found out, that it was sort of the opposite. Is that correct?
Well, I've actually written a lot about what a lot of other people are saying. I wrote a study. It's funny because I was actually looking at it this afternoon that looked at the question of, can government spending stimulate the economy? And I basically looked at all the studies that had been done and concluded that no, it's wishful thinking, because they're like really, really, even first economists don't agree. I mean, people always talk about as if economists agree on this, but they actually really don't agree. And when you look at the instances where government spending can lead to economic growth, I mean, you have conditions that are so particular that needs to be in place that it almost never happens, right? And in fact, if those conditions are not in place, government spending and the growth of government tends to shrink the economy. So it's exactly the reverse.
We have this problem in this country, economic ignorance, and it causes a lot of real human suffering because people, like in Detroit, think that the policies they were voting for were going to make things better, and unfortunately, turned Detroit into a hopeless situation. And so to end this sort of economic ignorance, and I know you have some association with the Cato Institute and so forth, how would you recommend anyone that's out there listening, how can a few books they can read or something like that to help themselves not be economically ignorant and help others?
There are so many books. I think maybe the one I would start with is Henry Hazlitt's called Economics in One Lesson. It actually, it was written a long time ago, but it's still a phenomenal it's really a phenomenal book that explains a lot of the misconceptions about unions, about price control, about a lot of that stuff. I would also read. There's so much, by the way, I think kind of going on the websites of the Mercatus Center, the Cato Institute, reading blogs written by the people who work at Cato, work at Mercatus, is actually also a good way to be informed, because these are like non-political organizations, and we're clearly free market. Cato's a libertarian, but they won't be kind of saying something for the sake of a party. So you'll get actually a pretty a balanced, a non-political assessment of an issue. It doesn't mean it's not free market. It's not neutral. We have opinions, but it's not opinions that are influenced by our politics.
Understood. Now, for people to follow your work and your writings and so forth, where would be the best places for them to go?
So you can go at Mercatus.com. or you can follow me on Twitter at Vero Derugy, VeroDerugy, or you can look, I write for The Corner at National Review, and I have a Creators Syndicate column. So if you Google my name, you'll find way more than you want to read.
And you have a very unique name.
Yes. Yes.
And by the way, you have a wonderful French accent. You've probably lost a lot of it being here in the United States for a while, but I always like French accents.
Veronique, will we see you at CPAC this year?
Yes, absolutely.
Always look forward to seeing you down there.
Yes, me too. Me too. I was wondering where you were.
Well, you know, I love to share the wealth of our knowledge with our audience and with my co-hosts. And there's sometimes I have to just sit back, listen, and learn. You know, that's what I use our guests for. Guests like you are my teacher. I am your student while you're here.
Yeah, but you are our voice.
The best way to learn, I've learned, for me, is to shut up and listen.
Yeah, but no, we don't want you to shut up. We want you to scream it from the hilltop.
One quick question, if we can go a little long with you, Veronique, I wanted to ask you about. In your article, something really jumped out at me and scared the hell out of me. It's that the GDP stood at $18 trillion. And I thought, wait a minute, our debt is $19 trillion.
Well, actually, our debt, I just wrote an article that's going to be published this afternoon, later tonight at the Washington Examiner. Our debt is about to go over $20 trillion if it's not already.
Do people, and what I'm getting at, Veronique, do people take the debt seriously anymore?
No.
Or is that just something they say, well, forget that. We'll never get control of that thing.
They don't. So gross debt is almost $20 trillion, and maybe about $20 trillion. And our public debt, so that public debt is the amount that the government owes to foreign and domestic investors, is close to 15%.
Oh.
Our overall debt is 20. Yeah, and people don't really quite care.
Well, crank up that printing machine.
It would be a disaster.
Crank up that printing machine and, it's like Monopoly money. We'll make it green and blue and yellow and blue, pink. We'll make it all kinds. Doesn't mean anything anymore. Veronique DeRuggie, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate the time you spend with us.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. God bless.
Thank
you. God bless you. Bye.
Dana, we went a little long. Got to make a quick wrap-up. I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. Want to thank Mr. John Forsythe Jr. for working the boards. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.